Good morning and welcome to Plymouth Sunday Forum. We're very glad you're here. And those of you at home, welcome to you also. This morning's program is co-sponsored by the Outreach Committee, and you'll hear about 3 organizations who will benefit from our Easter offering, our partners in town. Just a couple of housekeeping announcements. If you have questions, and we hope you do, please use the question Q&A function on your computer. If you have technical problems, use the chat function, and our wonderful tech musician up above us, Alex, will help you out. Without further ado now, I'd like to introduce E.J. Kelly from the Outreach Committee, and he will introduce our speakers. E.J.
Thank you, Jackie, and good morning, everyone here and tuning in. My name, as Jackie said, is E.J. Kelly, and I'm a member of the Board of Outreach. And the Board of Outreach, among other responsibilities, is in charge of making the decisions of how to allocate funding from our community fund. So this morning, we're going to hear from 3 organizations: Simpson Housing Service, Habitat for Humanity, and Align Minneapolis, which we formerly called, or was formerly known as the Downtown Congregations to End Homelessness. So before turning this over to our speakers, I want to highlight several things these organizations have in common. First, and the reason you're hearing from these 3 groups this morning, is that each of these organizations will be a recipient of Plymouth's Easter offering. Second, each of these organizations serves and advocates for people who are homeless or formerly homeless or are housing insecure. Third, each of these organizations also receives significant non-financial support from Plymouth and its members. I want to emphasize here that Plymouth community funding is not simply transactional. It also is intended to nurture connection. Through its community fund financial contributions, Plymouth amplifies the non-financial support it provides to these same organizations. These non-financial contributions take the form of more than 1,000 hours of annual volunteer work, the use of Plymouth facilities, and education and advocacy in the public space. Fourth, these organizations advance racial, economic, and social justice. That's one of the purposes of this church, and one of the stated purposes is to further economic, social, racial, and environmental justice. And finally, at least some of the people each organization serves or has served are from Plymouth's neighborhood around here. For all these reasons, funding these organizations is a priority of the Board of Outreach and Community Fund. Now, let me tell you about who you will hear from this morning. John Davenport is a Plymouth member who is one of the leaders of Plymouth's Habitat team and has worked on a number of projects over the years. Katie Dillon is a Plymouth member also who has served on several boards and task force at Plymouth. She is currently the director of Align Minneapolis, which was formerly called Downtown Congregations to End Homelessness. And Elizabeth Leffler is the director of advancement and communication for Simpson Housing Services. And I've gotten to know Elizabeth through all the work she does annually in helping make the Homeless Memorial March and service happen, which happens right here at Plymouth. So enough of me. I'm going to turn this over to John Davenport, and then we'll hear from Katie and then Elizabeth and have some time for questions at the end. Thank you for dropping in this morning.
Thanks, EJ, and good morning, everybody that's here and also virtually on Zoom. As EJ said, I've been involved with Habitat at least up until the last 3 or 4 years for over 10 years. And this is from my experience and also is what I've learned from the Plymouth history of what Habitat has been about and what we've done with them. First of all, officially, the church has been involved directly since 1993, so almost 30 years now. Before that, starting in the 1980s, there were a couple of Plymouth volunteers, a couple of women who went down to Georgia, where Plymouth or where Habitat is started, and did some volunteering and found out about the system there and brought it back. Initially, for 3 or 4 years, there were high school kids that were driven out to locations in Kentucky, in Colorado, and in South Dakota to do this sort of work. And their experience was also very encouraging. So the church started doing that. We have information, I have information that goes back about 10 years from 2008 to 2018, which involved over 120 different Plymouth volunteers. Some of them has worked as the largest as 21 sessions, with 2 sessions available each year. The sessions last about 5 days, depending on where the work is done and what the projects are. And we have, again, 160 volunteers. Half of them, almost exactly half, are women and half are men, including the top 10. The top person is a woman who's no longer active in the church membership just because of social family factors. But she and I work together. And so the work days are about 5, Monday through Friday or Tuesday through Saturday, depending on the project. The projects have been distributed across the Twin Cities. I've worked myself in St. Paul a couple of times. And these days, most of them are in North or South Minneapolis. You'll hear about, maybe you won't hear about Habitat. Habitat has been around for quite a long time in Minneapolis, Twin Cities. Twin Cities HFH, Habitat for Humanity, is the official title. And their main office is in St. Paul. They have a nice building of themselves. We have always coordinated, or they have coordinated with us, so that we know exactly where we're going to be working. We have advanced information about where we can have our build or brush sites, and we'll talk about those. And we have a coordinator that we link with sometimes for several years in a row, and they change over occasionally. So we get to know them, and they are very intimate and even come to our work sites to contact us, which is very nice. We have a planning committee of 6 or 8 people that evolve over the years. And I've been on that. I was on that committee for about 10 years altogether, where we discuss how we want to work, where we want to work, and it's all coordinated with our church membership, which is good. The work projects are 2 different kinds. The one is building a new house, so spending a week helping to build a new house, which can be early on in the build or sometimes at the very end, usually somewhere in the middle. So the kind of work we do is quite variable from year to year. We have professionals that do the roofing, that install the electrical activity and the plumbing and all that stuff, which we are really not certified to do. So we do all of we put the walls up and put the drywall on the walls, ultimately, put flooring in, tile in the bathrooms, and install some appliances, although again, if that's a major electrical connection, we don't do any of that stuff. And we don't get up on the roofs. In fact, everybody has a chance to work on a ladder, but most people don't want to, and they don't have to. So the major effort that we in Plymouth work is we have our people that have a lot of experience using saws and can help the other Plymouth members do their work. There is a person from Habitat there that's called what they call the site supervisor, who comes and they give us where the tools are located. All the Habitat provides all the tools, so we are fully supported. We also have a couple of usually women who bring lunch for all of the members, which is not typical of the Habitat work groups. In fact, that is one of the things that really helps us become a real work society. We've had several comments from the Habitat site supervisors, how that really pulls the whole group together. So we work much better together for the project than many of the churches. Usually churches are the people that organize like we do. What else do I need to say? Those lunches are fabulous, yeah. Ordinarily, the people that don't have this support from their experience from their established area, they go out for lunch and they have half an hour to go and get some food and bring it back sometimes. And so the work day is very closely knit in our group, which is a great advantage. Overall, over those 10 years from 2008 to 2018, we've had 29 different women who like to do it very often. And I wouldn't say it's a competition between them, who's going to be able to bring their recipes. They bring what they want to, and it's very, very nice always. So one of the mottos from Habitat is learn new skills. Now, many people don't want to know how to build a wall, but they have opportunity to see it, and they can learn to use tools better than they had known before. I think that's about all I need to say. In addition to the site supervisors, usually one or two young people who, again, I'm blocking on their titles. Help me out. There are people from, no, they're people, they're not the AmeriCorps people, exactly, come and they are very energetic and also can give advice and help us. Where do you find the screwdrivers, that sort of thing, which is always very helpful. So let me stop there just to say that I'm available if anybody from the congregation wants to know about this. I guess I should say also that we have 2 sessions every year. One is building a new house. One is repairing and upgrading an older established and occupied home where the owner is always there. We can do things inside and mostly outside, including building a new deck. We've done that several times. And we're going to have questions later on, and I'll turn this over to EJ and our next person.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Katie Dillon. I am the director of Align Minneapolis, and I'm also a Plymouth member here. So it's great to be with you all today and great to see so many familiar faces. So if we can go into my slideshow, that would be great. So I want to give an overview of Align Minneapolis, and I also want to really highlight some of the ways that we're in relationship with Plymouth as Align, as well as in relationship with a number of other congregations. I'm just going to make it so I can see this a little better because a lot of stuff is in my way. Great. So Align began in 2008 as the Downtown Congregations to End Homelessness. A lot of you are probably familiar with when this got started. It was kind of born out of the downtown clergy group, and they were recognizing that homelessness was a big issue in our city and really wanted to put some energy and some time and talent and resources into working on solving the problem. So Plymouth was a founding member, and of course today Plymouth continues to have a lot of involvement in the organization, including on our steering committee, which is sort of like our board of directors. And I also meet with the downtown clergy on a regular basis to make sure that they kind of know what we're doing. So we are an interfaith network. The reason that we changed our name a couple of years ago to expand beyond downtown congregations was because we started to expand our congregational involvement beyond downtown. So we're now 17 member congregations of different faith traditions. And as I mentioned, we expand kind of beyond downtown all throughout Minneapolis. We really take a multi-pronged approach at Align in terms of addressing homelessness. So one is, of course, we want to meet immediate needs in our community of those that are experiencing homelessness and those that are housing insecure. But we also know that we want to be working on systemic change and getting to some of the root causes of the issues and working for kind of that bigger and broader change to resolve homelessness long-term. One of our core tenets at Align is listening to the voices of those with lived experiences of homelessness. So you'll hear me talk a little bit later about Street Voices of Change, which is a group that we support. And they're a group of folks with lived experience of homelessness. we know that we don't ever want to be making decisions about the things that we're working on without involvement and hearing and the voices from those with lived experience. We have two folks from Street Voices of Change who have lived experiences of homelessness on our steering committee. And so really they're guiding every step of the way, the work that we do as an organization. One of the phrases you might be familiar with from some of the work that's going on in the community is the phrase, "Nothing about us without us is for us." I don't know if you've heard that before. I think that actually originated in the disability community, but we really take that to heart and we don't ever want to be doing things without those voices. And some of the other things that we do as in our organization. So of course, as an organization, we are very, very small, but because we're a part of this network of congregations, that really helps us to kind of, build power in the community. And another way that we do that is by participating in coalitions. So we have a local coalition that we participate in Minneapolis called Make Homes Happen, working on really local issues. And then we also participate in Homes for All, which is a statewide coalition working on homelessness issues at the state legislative level. Next slide, please. So one of the teams that we have, sort of a subcommittee of Align, is our direct service provider team. And we have a number of congregations that are part of our network that provide direct services within the community. Again, this is meeting the immediate needs of people experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. So the group of people that are representing the congregations that provide direct services, we get together on a regular basis to coordinate services, understand, what resources are out there, what are needs that are being met within our direct service providers, maybe what some of the gaps are. We're also constantly in communication with each other saying like, hey, if we don't offer this, do we know of a resource out there? So, maybe a church gets a call saying, from somebody saying, I really need help with, paying for my storage unit this month. Otherwise, I'm going to lose all my stuff and I'm between housing, I'm couch hopping. Do we know of somebody that can help with that? And so we're really just trying to help be out there on the ground, meeting the immediate needs of people. Some of the direct services that our network of congregations offer is things like free clothing shelves over at Central Lutheran and St. Olaf, food shelves. The Basilica offers ID vouchers. And of course, here at Plymouth, we host the Sunday meals. This group also oversees our emergency rental assistance program, which I'll go into a little more detail on later. And some of you are familiar with the Street Song Choir and have participated in that group, which is a wonderful group that we hope to restart here pretty soon. That group emerged out of the direct service providers team because of a recognition that it's not only just providing tangible needs, but also sort of meeting those needs of the heart and the soul, right? And as I mentioned, Plymouth is connected to the direct service provider by Sunday meals, as well as other things. Next slide. So our organizing team is another subcommittee of Align. This team is just an amazing powerhouse. So this is the way that we sort of get out into those congregations and are activating within congregations. The organizing team creates 3 seasonal campaign guides each year. And each of these campaign guides, they have components including education, advocacy, and volunteering opportunities, as well as goods drives, things like that. And each congregation then can take what they would like to out of the guide and use it within their own communications or use it within their own initiatives. And the organizing team members, so representing different congregations, are really out there within congregations trying to, communicate with congregation members, trying to activate and make sure that people kind of know what's going on and know the ways to get involved. And this team also publishes a monthly bulletin to provide some timely updates, especially as we're going through the state legislative session. We know that, kind of every minute things change. So we like to provide really timely updates through our monthly bulletin. So if you're ever interested in signing up for that, you can just go to our website. There's a thing that'll pop up right on the homepage, and you can sign up to receive our monthly bulletin to stay informed. So I mentioned the Street Voices of Change group. I have the honor of attending their meetings every week, and they're just an amazing group of people. So it's a group of people with lived experiences of homelessness, and they're getting together and working on different issues that are important to them and important to their community and working to make change on those issues. So there's 2 meetings every week, and they're at 2 different locations on Thursdays and Fridays at member congregations of ours. So that group gets together, they create a lot of community with each other. I've heard folks talk about how Street Voices of Change meetings are a safe space for them, which for folks experiencing homelessness can often be really hard to find. A place where they can come together, they can find people that they trust, They can tell their story in a way that they know will be held in confidentiality. And then they can work together to make change. They're building power together. They're recognizing that, you know what, my experience may be unique, but there are some similarities that other people have experienced as well. One of the things that they have come to work on together over the last few years is something called the Shelter Residents Bill of Rights. So the group is recognizing that in a lot of the shelters locally, they were facing a lot of the same issues and some things that weren't being done at shelters that were leading people to feel like the experiences were unsafe, experiences were undignified. And so they worked together to create a Shelter Residents Bill of Rights that then got implemented within the Hennepin County shelter system, which was huge, the biggest shelter system in the state. And then that was actually taken to the state legislature. And now the legislature has something called the Shelter Task Force, which is working to create standards of care for the entire state to make sure that people have safe and dignified shelter. So really incredible, incredible work. So, you know, of course, they have a ton of expertise because these are the folks with the lived experience. So oftentimes they're called on to share their expertise with other initiatives. So Hennepin County may be, you know, undergoing some different initiatives or interviewing for new staff. And so they'll call on Street Voices of Change members to participate. There's a couple of folks who are asking some Street Voices people to get some feedback on from our Sunday meal guests, you know, to come and talk to people to get some feedback about those experiences. So really, you know, like I said, a lot of expertise there that people are calling on. And this group has also recently started a speakers bureau. So getting out and sharing their stories, sharing their individual stories, sharing their stories about what Street Voices works on. So if there's ever opportunities that you guys think of that would say, hey, it'd be great to hear from, you know, the Street Voices folks, let me know and we can connect you with that group. So our emergency rental assistance program is the one direct service that Align as ourselves administers on our own. And really the goal of the emergency rental assistance program is to prevent homelessness from happening in the first place, right? We want to keep people in their homes, prevent homelessness from occurring. So during crisis situations, people might get behind on their rent, and our program can provide them with one-time assistance to help them get caught up on their rent and be able to move forward. So maybe somebody experiences a job loss and is in between jobs, they might get a little behind, and then they have a new job, but they just need that help getting caught up. Or maybe they had an unexpected medical bill, or they had to take time off of work to help care for a sick family member. Of course, we've heard a lot of that lately. Or, you know, maybe their car had a really big repair bill. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of you know that folks that are on limited or lower incomes, they really don't have a huge savings. You know, $500 could set them back immensely. So I just want to give a little summary to kind of highlight what we were able to accomplish over 2021. So we served 64 households in our emergency rental assistance program. 25 of those were families with minor children, and the rest were adult-only households. We provided total assistance, direct assistance, just under 150,000, and the average assistance per household was just over 2,000. It's interesting to note that this number over time has actually been rising a little bit. We think that a lot of that is related to just overall rising rents. And a lot of the people that we served, in fact, the majority of the people that we served had one or more risk factors for homelessness. So risk factors can be that they've experienced homelessness in the past, or that they are at low income, so 50% area median income, 30% area median income or lower, or also that they are people of color, because we know that homelessness has a disproportionate impact on Black, Brown, and Indigenous neighbors. So thank you again for having me here. Of course, I'm gonna show you all the ways that you can find out more educational resources. You can go on our website to have some self-guided education. We've got podcasts to listen to, books to read, other things to look through. And if you ever want to get into contact with me, it's pretty easy to do. You can find me here on a lot of Sundays, or go to our website, send me an email, connect with me on social. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Leffler, the Director of Advancement and Communications for Simpson Housing Services. Before I share more about Simpson Housing Services' mission to house, support, and advocate for people experiencing homelessness, I'd love to share a story, and I would love to share this video of a former participant.
Consider my lowest point is a time when I actually had to sleep outside at a bus shelter with the kids. My youngest was very little. I don't think he was even 6 months old yet because he was actually in a little baby carrier. That particular day, I got on the city bus with the kids and I just kind of rode. I rode around, and I had a transfer, so we just kept riding and kept riding. And they're so young and they have no idea what's going on. And so they're just happy to be riding, and they're on the bus and they see big trucks and they see doggies. And in my mind, all I'm thinking is, what am I gonna do tonight? Where am I gonna sleep with these kids? And they have no idea of what we're going through. There was a grocery store in like a shopping area there. And I went into the grocery store and I had my EBT card, so I had food stamps at the time. And I went and I bought snacks for the kids to eat. I bought a bottled water and I bought some formula. And I sat at the bus stop and I put the kids in a shopping cart and I put the big ones at the bottom of the cart and the two littler ones at the top to kind of like keep each other warm. And then I had the baby in my carrier. And we sat there and they slept eventually. And I just sat up all night and just kind of watched over us. And that next morning, I didn't know what I was gonna do. I just needed stability. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I just wanted to be able to place my feet somewhere firmly for a change and just be able to move forward without having everything in life just kind of sway me back and forth. And so after being able to kind of just get my mind together for a little bit, we came up with the plan. I went back into shelter. And that second stint of being in the county shelters is when I was connected to Simpson and I was able to get into an apartment with the rental subsidy assistance that they had. That was like a lifesaver to me. I was able to go to school and not worry about something like, where am I gonna lay my head tonight? Or, what are my kids gonna eat for dinner? Just small things like that a lot of people may take for granted. Just having a stable, safe, secure place to just lay our heads at night allowed me to think about what my future could be like. I had my own kitchen. I had my own apartment. I had a 3-bedroom apartment. And so that was awesome. So I was able to have holidays in my apartment with my kids, and I was able to have birthday celebrations. It makes a huge difference just overall. Your quality of life, just your hopes and dreams for the future shift. That step for me was so instrumental in helping to start the path of stability that I ended up on. I would want people to think twice before they make assumptions about people that are going through or experiencing homelessness. I know what it feels like to be homeless. I know what it feels like to be stranded, to be stuck someplace. And now it means a lot to me to try to give back. And that's one of the reasons that I do what I do with Simpson. It's because it means so much to me. And I want to be able to help others, to be able to exhale, to be able to finally say, we're home, and mean that. And I know how I felt when it happened to me. And so if I can help other people to get that same satisfaction, then I'll definitely keep doing it. My name is Buffy Moore. I currently serve on Simpson's board, and I'm a former program participant in Simpson Housing. Now that you've heard my story and you see how Simpson was able to help me, I'd like to invite you to also lend a helping hand to a family that might be in need, to get to a point in life where they can also reach back and help someone else out.
Thank you. Buffy's story is just one of the many people we have helped transition out of homelessness. Buffy recently served on our board, works at Hennepin County, is a grandmother, and is currently back in school getting her master's in social work. Simpson Housing Services began 40 years ago. The women of Simpson United Methodist Church opened the doors to the congregation and invited people sleeping on the church steps to come in from a cold Minnesota winter. These women saw people in need and responded with grace and generosity. The doors of the shelter have been open ever since, helping thousands of people transition out of homelessness. Each and every day, Simpson staff works to help people break the cycle of poverty and homelessness. We annually serve over 2,000 people. Simpson's values are at the core of our work. We recognize and celebrate the uniqueness and dignity of each person. We have a talented staff that is committed to building relationships with shelter guests, individuals, and families, helping them overcome barriers and providing connections to safe housing and supportive services. Like many businesses, churches, and nonprofits, we have shifted our focus to the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our shelter has been open 24 hours, 7 days a week since March of 2020. When we were the first shelter to pivot to a 24/7 model when the pandemic began. We will continue to operate this way. Our staff have adjusted to incorporating safety measures into regular check-ins with shelter guests and participants, everything from wearing a mask at the shelter and at house visits, helping our participants get vaccinated, and supporting parents when they need help while their children were doing distance learning. All while they've continued to place participants in housing. Last year, our staff moved 575 people into affordable and supportive housing. We also leaned into our commitment to racial equity in the wake of the nationwide protests of 2020. Staff have been re-examining programs and working to eliminate white saviorism in our programs wherever they linger. Our programs are no longer transactional, merely performing a service for someone. They are transformational, focused on embarking upon a relationship that strengthens both parties and the overall community. But we could not do this work without our volunteers, donors, and partners. We are honored to have a partnership with Plymouth Congregational Church. The congregation has been a partner and friend to Simpson for 22 years. I'd love to share and acknowledge a few highlights of the history between Simpson and Plymouth. When we had to relocate our annual Homeless Memorial March and service in 2019, you answered the call and thankfully welcomed this important community event into your space. You have organized countless food and supply drives, and we value the tradition of your Undy Sunday program. Pre-COVID, when we needed a large meeting space, you hosted our board meetings, monthly staff meetings, and a space for our Art for Shelter fundraiser committee to work. You have served meals at our shelter. And a side note, we would welcome you back now that our volunteer program is back, serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner for our shelter guests. We thank the Plymouth Congregational Church and members for volunteering and the financial commitment to support our mission and values. Thank you for your partnership and friendship, as together we can end homelessness in our community.
Thank you. I have to take a deep breath after all of that. We really are fortunate to have these partners. As I said at the beginning, this isn't transactional, it's about relationship, and we love to see that you all think it's about relationship as well, and building a better community, the beloved community. At this point in time, you must have some questions, right? Myra, why don't you kick us off? And Alex. Oh, go ahead, Myra. Yeah. Oh.
I'm really
Important part.
Yeah. Well, all of it was interesting. I'm particularly interested in Simpson's going 24/7 instead of overnight, which is exciting. I mean, I've always thought it was sad when people got kicked out at 8 a.m. or 6 a.m. or whatever. So I'm just wondering, how's that going? I'm guessing it stretches your resources more. And what do people do there during the day? And just anything you can tell me about the daytime thing.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, when we pivoted in 2020 to be 24/7, it's always been our dream to do that. Nobody likes to get up in the morning. I don't, and right away get out into the cold winter and you don't know what you're going to do for the day. So I remember very clearly when Wendy Wigman, our associate director, we were standing in the office and on March 17th, she said, we're going 24/7, just like that. No gearing up, no, not looking at the budget, nothing. We just went for it because we knew it was the right thing to do when everyone was sheltering in place and didn't have our folks at the shelter didn't have a home like so many of us do. So I put out a call. Plymouth was there, funders were there, supporters were there until the government funding kicked in for us. And we continue to operate this way. It has increased our budget. I don't know off the top of my head on a Sunday morning what that is, but we are continuing to do it. And it is our plan and our plan to move forward as we build our new shelter. Also, it's a time for our shelter guests to connect with their service providers, their case managers, to get them the housing that they need. So we don't have to go to a library to locate those shelter guests. We can just, sit in the living room of the shelter and talk to them and try to break down those barriers to find them the housing that they need.
I'm going to add a comment on my own here. When we think of housing, we also think of a building, a facility. Absolutely right. But a huge part of what all these organizations do, it's the relationships. So it's these services and the case managers and the advocates and the nurses and the support of children. That's critical too. And that needs funding, not just from volunteers at Plymouth, but from government funding, because a lot of times, the legislature will allocate the money for the capital, like across the street, building the new building for Lydia, but then there are ongoing operating costs. And so to go 7 days a week, like Myra said, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, that's meals, and that's a lot more people being there for services. So, and we tend to forget about those as a society once we've built the building.
Yeah. And I want to also add for 24/7 shelter. So thank you for the question. From what I've heard from folks with lived experience that are staying in shelters, it's been a huge, huge, huge benefit. People really enjoy having the 24/7 option. So if they have things that they need to leave for, fine, but if not, and they want to stay in place, great. And the other thing that I'll mention is, and to Elizabeth's point, being able to find folks. So when somebody has a housing case manager who is working with them to get permanent housing, but maybe that person doesn't have a phone, or they can't, it's harder to get in touch with them, being able to say, okay, well, I'll meet you at the place you're staying, at such and such a time, is really, really helpful. And the other thing I'll mention is that, so Hennepin County, who oversees the shelter contracts, when things went 24/7 due to COVID, they recognized that it was something that was really meaningful and really beneficial. And so they have actually asked the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners to fund 24/7 going forward. And I don't know the status of that, but my understanding is that generally speaking, folks were pretty supportive of that. But if you live in Hennepin County and your commissioner, mention that to them, that it's an important thing that we know is really meaningful for folks that are staying in shelter.
And Kareem Murphy, Dwayne's husband, has made a pitch to, I know, Katie and me, to exactly around that, because again, it is that we need to make sure that's funded right now, and it's a current challenge in this local legislative year, the Hennepin County. Other questions?
Hi, thank you for being here. Bouncing off of that just a little, we live in St. Paul, and I know that in St. Paul, one of the business community near the day shelters have been one of the biggest opponents of the day shelters. And it's been a real struggle, especially I know for the city council person who represents the area where there are a lot of the day shelters. I'm wondering if there have been any successful strategies that you know of, or successful campaigns that you know of in convincing or helping to persuade business owners to see those places as necessary and important, despite the negative impression that a lot of them have.
Well, I have heard that sometimes it's the really simple going and knocking on doors kind of thing. So, there have been initiatives trying to happen in different parts of the city, including most recently women's shelter that's going in right by the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And, of course, there's a variety of sentiment, right, from the community. But what I've seen is that if folks are familiar with the area and have folks on the ground in the area and can literally do some of that door to door, talking with people and talking about, maybe listening to concerns or holding community meetings where, people can come and talk and have those concerns heard. But then also people can talk about the positives, right? People can talk about the need for these services and the benefit to folks being able to have a safe and dignified place to go. And, rather than perhaps, sleeping outside or, in other places not meant to be living. So, it's kind of one of those things, like there's no magical answer, but it is about building those relationships and trying to listen to people who have concerns and being able to address some of those concerns. Yeah. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's all about the relationship. I mean, at Simpson, we're in the Whittier neighborhood and we're working on rebuilding that shelter. We went door to door to every neighbor, letting them know what was doing. We had community meetings. We did tours. We have them meet the staff. It's about building those relationships, not just with the people who are, who need the services, but the people who can support the services.
And we need to remember Plymouth is a member of the community as well in this area, and Plymouth has some power. So when Lydia decided they wanted to expand across the street, Plymouth literally supported that at the city council level. And I know, Elizabeth, you asked me at one point in time, maybe it wasn't necessary, if Plymouth would support Simpson's expansion on the site. So again, our churches can make we're in the community and we can advocate as well. And our voice is important like other neighbors.
Absolutely.
And financially also.
Yes. Yes. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention financial help is always valuable.
Yeah, thank you. Katie and anyone else as well. Like you mentioned, the changes you're seeing with higher need a little bit for people, like, and you think it's because of rents rising, which is, logical. We're reading the news. Do you see other trends that are really impacting the folks that you're serving? And what are you thinking of pivoting to change?
Oh gosh, there's so many, right? So we recently have gone through the end of the eviction moratorium, and we know that there's a chunk of landlords that were sort of itching to take action to take their people into court and say, pay your arrears or be gone. So in terms of pressures, I mean, it's at all fronts, right? We know there's a housing shortage, particularly for affordable housing, particularly for affordable to those who make 30% area median income or less. And, I think people hear that as sort of this idea. This is people who are on Social Security disability income, right? $800-900 a month. This is people who are on Social Security retirement income. This is people who, maybe they're working a low wage job, or maybe they can only work part-time. So the people at the lowest income, if you do the math, and affordable housing, or housing affordability, I should say, is supposed to be 30% of your income or less. So if someone is making $900 a month as their income on, maybe it's disability income, that's $300 a month in rent. That would be affordable to them. Now, that doesn't exist, right? And so unless somebody has some sort of rental assistance voucher or, some sort of subsidized housing, it's really, really hard for them to find housing. So we know housing shortage is one, rents rising, costs rising is another. Plus people are getting additional pressure from, other costs of living going up. On the wage side, we have seen some increases and some benefits on the wage side. But that's not always being seen in folks that are the lowest income. So they might see a little bump, but they're not seeing a significant enough bump to keep up with the rising costs. And so, wage, I would say just generally not having livable wages is one. There's just so many. So yeah. And then in terms of in terms of the sort of like big picture, costs of building are going up. And so developers are sometimes disincentivized from building new housing and particularly building affordable housing. This is where the state legislature can come in with things like housing infrastructure bonds to help developers such as nonprofit developers be able to afford to actually develop affordable housing in the first place. Now, we've heard at the state legislature, there's, a divided legislature. There's a lot of pushback from the Republican held Senate on housing infrastructure bonds. So it's a wide range. And in terms of how we as an organization approach it, it's really tough to know where to prioritize and where to put our time and energy because there are so many issues. So of course we prioritize the emergency rental assistance and making sure that folks can stay in their home. But really, I think one of the other big things is advocating for more affordable housing and more affordable options. Get creative. Single room occupancy. The county is working on converting hotels to housing. That's great. It's a creative solution. It's a slice of the pie to make some affordable housing for folks. It's things like getting out in the community and talking to neighbors when a housing development is maybe going to go in and it's affordable housing and people are saying, I'm not sure I want this in my backyard. It's saying, yes, you do. And here's why. And let's talk about the importance of it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Just to build on that a little bit, do you have specific things that you're hoping the legislature will do other than generally build more bonding or supply more bonding and build more housing?
I'm sure everybody has heard the refrain at this point. So we have a $9 billion surplus, but we can't call it a surplus when not everybody's needs are being met, right? So we want more money for the spectrum of housing issues. Housing affects every single person in the state, right? So everything from capital investment and shelter to make sure that when people need it, there's a safe place to go, all the way through, we would love to see some of you might be familiar with the Beacon campaign, Bring It Home Minnesota, seeing universal vouchers so that everyone can have affordability in their housing and those infrastructure bonds. If we had to really prioritize, because we know, it's so hard. We want it all. So I think just like investment at all the levels. And, let's not drag our feet. We know the money's there, so let's put it to where it's needed.
At Simpson, we call it a continuum of services. We need a variety of different types of housing. We need a variety of different types of shelters, culturally specific shelters, shelter for women. We need more housing for harm reduction, services to bring in so people can address their chemical and mental health needs. So we're looking for a continuum of different varieties.
Three minutes. So let's have one final question and then I'm going to turn it back to Jackie. Alex, do you have questions too? Let's get this question, then we'll go to Alex.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting. Could you tell us, there's been the program with the churches housing people for a week and then also providing an evening and a morning meal, I think. And could you elaborate a little bit on how you feel that this might be supplementing what you're doing?
That's not Simpson's program.
Oh,
That program's called Families Moving Forward. And that's a Beacon program, and Plymouth does participate in that, as well as a number of the other churches, both in the city and out, even in the southwest suburbs. And we have 2 weeks this year where Plymouth will be participating in that. The first week, Beacon has decided that the families will still stay in hotels, which is what happened during the COVID period. But come August, we will host families here where they spend the nights here. We feed them, spend time with the families, give the parents some breaks, feed them breakfast, and then the children go about if it's during the school year, they go to school. and the parents may go to their job, or there's a day center that Beacon runs, Families Moving Forward runs, that at which they can meet with a case manager and do that sort of thing. So every little bit helps. It's not enough to take care of everything. But it does take in families, because a lot of the shelters don't take full families. Like I believe Simpson at its shelter they have single adults. So it's nice to have some additional space that takes in families. Alex, do you have one?
We do have a few questions up here that we can go through real quick. First one is, do the habitat owners still volunteer and help build/fix their own homes?
No, they don't directly. Sometimes they provide snacks, particularly the ones that are fixing their homes up. Very often, actually, the people that are getting support from Habitat provide what they call sweat equity, which means they come to the build site and can work with us, which is really very helpful. And we meet them and can support them as we're doing that. One thing I did not mention also is that Plymouth provides $6,000 or $8,000 for every project that we work on, which is one of the recipients of the Easter donations.
Next question is, will the street choir be performing in Plymouth this year? If not, when and where?
Great question. I know that eventually they would love to come to Plymouth. Right now they are on a bit of a pause due to one of the directors had retired. One of the directors is doing a big trip to Europe. And so they did have to pause post COVID, but they're hoping to come back together late summer. And so I think it would be great to talk to whomever it is that would like to, host that here at Plymouth. And if there's an opportunity for a concert, maybe in early next year or something like that.
Briefly describe, how do neighborhood people qualify for ERA and how burdensome is the process?
Excellent question. So there are a few requirements that we have, and one is that a person would have exhausted the emergency general assistance through the county. So either they've used it in the last 12 months, or they have applied and been denied, or we know that they would not qualify because that pool of money is so much bigger than ours. So we definitely want to make sure that resource is being utilized first. The second would be that they do have the ability to pay their rent going forward. So they have some type of income that can cover rent going forward. And then the third big piece is being able to document what the crisis was that led to getting behind on rent. We don't like the process to be overburdensome, of course, and we have an amazing coordinator who helps walk through that process with folks. There are a couple ways to apply in person. There are ways to apply online. And so we really try to work with people to make sure that they're able to get through that process and help them along the way. But there are a few kind of general core requirements.
And let me point out back to one of my continuing themes from outreach is that pre-COVID, one of the places where we had navigators helping people with the rent help or the rent application was here at Plymouth, as well as Dignity Center and Central Lutheran. But we would do that in Plymouth's building with Plymouth and other volunteers.
Yeah, and so we do hope to restart that at whatever point it makes sense to have in-person intakes where volunteers here can help with that. That's a really great relationship building piece.
And the last question is, does Simpson offer childcare for parents who have jobs? If not, is childcare provided in some other way?
That's a great question. So at Simpson, we have a children and youth service program, and our staff works to get help provide not necessarily daycare directly ourselves, but we'll work with the children. If parents need assistance, we'll get them find them the slots for daycare and so forth, or work with our partners. Simpson has a value of not duplicating services in the community. If there's a service in the community, we will find it and we will partner with those services. So.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation and I appreciate it. Just want to let you know that next Sunday is Palm Sunday. And Plymouth gets our palm fronds from a special program called Echo Palms in Guatemala. And Professor Dean Current will be with us and he'll tell us about that program, and hope you'll come and join us.